Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us at our inaugural Product in Healthtech conference. My name is Chris Hoyd. I'm the Director of Product at VYNYL, which is a product development firm that works with a lot of healthcare clients, including doing everything from sort of early stage product strategy for innovation teams to comprehensive digital transformations for large healthcare organizations. I'm fortunate to get to host a few leaders in health tech today as we discuss the roles that product and growth and marketing and commercialization teams play in the development of health tech products. Namely Everett Crosland, Chris Lento, and Closson. Everett leads the commercial organization at Applied VR, which is the global leader in pioneering therapeutic virtual reality. Applied VR is advancing its clinical stage VR treatments for chronic pain. As Chief Commercial Officer, Everett leads Applied VR's commercial readiness, marketing, sales, and health economic evidence development for the company's breakthrough medical device portfolio. Chris leads the healthcare partnerships team at NOOM. NOOM is a digital health organization focused on helping people everywhere become healthier through behavior change. NOOM offers psychology-based digital programs that power you to make healthier choices by better understanding yourself, your brain, and the science of choice. Powered by data, technology, and human coaches, NOOM has helped millions of people meet their personal health and wellness goals, from weight management to diabetes prevention to stress reduction. As head of the partnership team, Chris is focused on growing NOOM's presence across healthcare channels. And Lauren manages partnership marketing and market entry work at Propeller Health, a digital health company dedicated to making life better for every person and community affected by chronic respiratory disease. She partners closely with pharma companies, payers, and health systems to grow Propeller's patient user base around the world. Thank you all so much for joining. It's a huge privilege for me to get to talk with you today. I'm really excited for this conversation. And without further ado, maybe I'll kick it off to Chris. Chris, can you just talk us through what is a day in the life like for you?
Thank you, everybody. So day in the life of my work at NOOM is I am responsible for helping NOOM to grow outside of the consumer channel through the focus on partnerships with life science companies, pharmaceutical and medical device companies, as well as employers, payers, and health systems. So I am often engaged with the decision makers looking to bring our NOOM, either healthy weight, healthy mind, or one of our disease condition specific programs into the benefit of either a patient, plan member, or employee. This often involves some customization to our programs. So while working with our product team, we're very much working hand in hand to meet the customer's needs and make sure our product can deliver the value that it's intended to. But very much out on the front lines, working with external stakeholders with a strong connectivity inside to our product organization.
Excellent, thank you. Lauren, what about you?
Sure. Hi, thanks for hosting, Chris. Like the other Chris, I also work very closely on a daily basis with the product organization and with external parties like pharma companies, payers, health systems. I'm on the marketing side, so my target goal is really to grow our user base around the world. So I currently work out of our London hub, and we are expanding Propeller across multiple new markets. So really evaluating the problems that patients and providers have in the chronic respiratory disease space, finding how our product can meet those needs, add value to multiple stakeholders.
Excellent, thank you. And Everett?
I guess a typical day in the life of somebody like myself at Applied VR is that we are mapping out our go-to-market strategy, working with an agency of record to build out marketing, market shaping, sales strategy, both to physicians, payers, organized customers, et cetera. At the same time, constantly liaising with product teams to ensure that what we're hearing from the market is translated and reflected in the product roadmap and kind of working through that difference in dialects and language around what a customer needs, how that translates into a PRD, et cetera. So it pulled in a lot of different directions because it's a small company, but that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Thank you all. So now I want to get into a little bit of the tactical side. It does sound like liaising or collaborating or co-creating with product is a reasonably big part of each of your roles. Can we maybe pick a recent time or two where you've done that, you've done it successfully, it went well, and you can kind of talk us through what that looked like? And maybe I'll stick with the sequence. So I'll go back to Chris. Is there a recent time that you can talk us through on that front?
Yeah, sure. Noom's probably most visible partnership on the pharmaceutical side is with Novo Nordisk. And we are partnered in which patients who receive a prescription of the FDA-approved product called Saxenda have the opportunity to opt into a subsidized program, a customized Noom digital behavioral change program that we call anti-obesity medication. So when combining drug plus software, where product interfaces and where I often have to liaise, I like that word, is making sure that the patient experience and the patient journey is seamless. Once they've received that prescription, how do we get them this digital program? How does it get downloaded on their phone? How do they begin using and stay engaged with that program? That isn't responsibility of the business development team at Noom. That very much falls to our product. And while we don't call them marketing teams, really our growth teams to make that transition seamless. We've done it now 30,000 times. So we've gotten pretty good at it, but it hasn't been an easy path. Lots of trial and error, lots of experimentation, and lots of user feedback that has gone to making this program relatively seamless. There are always challenges with technology, but that's probably our shining example of working together and proving that this can work on the digital side.
That is incredible. Okay, cool. Lauren, what about you? Maybe on the marketing side, is it a little bit different?
Sure, yeah. So I would say the most successful launches or partnerships that I've worked on have been where myself and a product manager in particular work very closely with one another pre-contracting before those negotiations happen, in close communication with any business development or sales lead, so that we can scope out the requirements for that successful partnership early on. And then this tight team learns to really trust each other from the very beginning. So by the time we get to a launch of any sort, we have all of our ducks in a row. We have the plan set out, and we can work closely to make it a success post-launch. So we build that trust internally and externally. So I love working with product leaders who have a nice external representation of our company as well, are able to communicate their work really succinctly externally as well.
Very cool. And Everett.
Yeah, I think, similar experiences probably on a bit of a smaller scale because we're earlier stage, but what we tend to do is go and put the product in the hands of the potential end user, put the product in the hand of physicians who work with those patients, engage feedback on a small level first, and then work to scale from there. It's iterative, and sequential a lot of times, where we are getting feedback from a couple of different sources and then going back and scaling that feedback to, from 20 to 100 to 500. I think a really interesting example that is relatable for most people is that about a year and a half ago, we scaled into the VA with a wellness product to treat acute pain or to help people cope with pain. And when we first started that process of kind of putting the product in front of people, we immediately got feedback both on the voiceover in the virtual reality experiences that really just wouldn't work for the veteran population. It wasn't authoritative enough. It wouldn't be relatable for them. And we also had imagery of campfires, and just it was one of our experiences. And on multiple occasions, we had physicians highlight that as problematic because it can be a trigger event. Campfires can be a trigger event for PTSD. And so, we took that feedback and ultimately came forward with a product that was just a much more bespoke, better fit for that pretty unique population. And it's worked quite well ever since. And, we continue to iterate, but it's that type of real world feedback that you just, you can't get without going out, speaking to customers, getting in with the people who will actually use your product. You can't do it from just research. You have to get out and actually speak to those people.
That's fascinating, and I think speaks to the level of precision and detail, for one thing, required to make anything effective in health tech, but also the level of, like you use the word bespoke, like you gotta personalize it. It seems like in as many cases as possible. So that's fascinating. And I'm curious from a tactical standpoint, is that you and your product lead on the same call as the VA, or what does that look like? How do you make sure that no wires get crossed there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the first few engagements are going to be the commercial team, whether it's sales or marketing. And then typically we bring in R&D and product. R&D is there just to kind of be part of the process early in the event that the conversation translates into something where we need clinical evidence, that we've adjusted the offering to such an extent that we now need to supplement that with clinical evidence. But yeah, absolutely, we bring product in at, I would say, before we're even 33% along, and it can be quite helpful because there's so much lost in that telephone. Commercial people can only be so attentive to, what ultimately would, can only be so attentive in their mind of what would ultimately be in a PRD. And then product people, often jump right down into the kind of down into the weeds very, very quickly. So you strike a balance just by bringing everybody in early.
That's super interesting. So Chris and Lauren, I'm curious if you guys have a different process. Is it earlier or later than 33% into the process when you guys product?
We've tried to bring in product leaders, at least one product leader, one marketing leader, as early on as possible. I think focusing when we bring those product people on early on to avoid solutioning too quickly, we all try to come at it with whatever the client or potential client partner is asking for. They're trying to communicate a need. They're not asking for a distinct list of deliverables necessarily. So getting product leaders who can kind of read between the lines, understand the underlying need that partner has and that they want to serve for their population, not necessarily taking everything that they have to say and creating those exact features necessarily. So somebody who has have a holistic view of what this program or offering is going to look like.
Yeah. Chris, we're not unsimilar to what Lauren and Everett had shared. I work in tandem with product and other parts of the organization. I think maybe one differentiator of NOOM is that we have this really successful consumer business,
right,
which is on one side, and we have product and growth and research supporting that. When you drive towards the more traditional healthcare channels, some of the things that have made us successful and some of the challenges we have on the consumer side do not directly correlate to the healthcare side. So I often ask other members of the team when I bring them in to kind of drop some of the things about consumer and be really open. And the NOOM product team is great. They want to solve problems more than anything. And it's hard to solve a problem until you identify what the problem is. So we all need to be patient and let our customers drive the conversation there, rather than assuming what worked on a consumer side is going to work on the patient or healthcare side.
Right.
You know, it's interesting too, if you don't mind me kind of layering on. So there's this, there's always this like push and pull where the commercial team's out speaking to customers and getting all this feedback about, and as soon as you talk to a customer, you know, and you have a software product, and Chris Lento can speak to this, everybody ultimately immediately becomes a product developer. It doesn't matter whether you're, you know, a chief medical officer of a major health system or not. You look at the product and go, yeah, so this is great for what you were just presenting, but can it do these 5 other things? And so, that's, you know, that's always makes for innovative and creative conversations, but at the same time, you're there to sell the product that you have, right? And so there's this, yeah, there's kind of this tension where you need to, as a commercial person, part of your job is to read between that, like, everybody becomes a product developer in moment one, and what is actually a need, a feature that will, you know, that will drive market share. And I think a lot of times on the product side of the house, that filter just hasn't been as strong from their perspective on the commercial side. So they hear a lot of like, well, so and so said that if only the product did these 2 additional things, then, you know, we'd have a great deal. And the product team kind of starts to become, rightfully so, a little bit skeptical of, you know, how much are you filtering? And so I think including product in those meetings, not right at the outset, but in those meetings, once you have filtered down to something that is more of a trend versus just a off the cuff statement, is helpful. And it also on the other side of the equation, the product team is often saying, I'm not going to make a change until I know that there's a business case for this. Well, you can only create a business case if you test something. And so if you're out kind of pre-selling something, the product team hates that, because now you're selling something that you don't have in the product.
Right.
And so I think a good solution is doing some more filtering on the commercial side of the house, and then having, once you've done that, once you're into a meeting where the decision makers are saying, we're there, we recognize that we're buying this product, we want to talk about your roadmap. That's, you know, but they're already there for the product at hand. That's kind of a trigger to bring them in. And typically you can get there, pretty early. So.
Everett, to tap onto that, my job has been made a lot easier in that NOOM has this, 2 values. One is ruthless prioritization. So I've been told far more times no than yes, right? And we learn from our millions of consumer users all these great ideas, which we experiment with on a daily basis. So by the time the product reaches me for external healthcare distribution, any sort of suggestion that I get from an end client, I have some information that says, over the 14 years, NOOM has tried that. We've run this experiment. It did not move the needle at all, so it doesn't live as a feature in the program. But thank you for suggesting that, right? What you're seeing now are the results of some really great experiments that did move the needle, and 99 out of 100 are left on the cutting room floor, never to be seen again.
Yeah, it's kind of the great N of one versus you guys have the N of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. So.
Yeah, I mean, every company has its advantages. The scale is something that, we're able to move pretty quickly on now.
And I think when you have a product leader who deeply understands the larger commercial strategy and why you're approaching one target customer over another, they can feel like they have more of a stake in that relationship as well, and they want it to succeed. So they can solution with the commercial lead to make it work. So it doesn't necessarily have to be where the commercial lead started, but they can find a middle ground that can work for that partner.
Yeah.
Lauren, I could say that's advanced, at least in the NOOM world, to the point where I feel really comfortable handing a potential partnership or collaboration over to the product team.
Oh,
Because
wow.
they really do, outside of the business term part of it, they really do understand the customer needs and the building. So it's gotten a lot easier as we've grown and gained more experience in the traditional healthcare worlds, that our product teams really can drive the development of the program outside of the business development or commercial team.
So you guys just segued to the topic that I really wanted to touch on next, which was kind of the tension, like you said, Everett, of growth and product. And it sounds like, Chris, you kind of resolved the tension. It doesn't sound like there's a ton of tension there right now. Like you've maybe done enough experiments, there's enough data that, and you've maybe because of that, you've got enough confidence in your product team that you can let them out into the world and talk to your clients. But I just want to double click on that. Is there are there any more stories of whether you've sold something that the product team was that was like 2 years down the roadmap, or any examples of that kind of tension and how you resolved it?
Yeah, we kind of have a working agreement that there are never promises made and deals are not signed. Everything goes in draft format. But I think the tension that does exist still is a healthy tension. I think we come at this from years of experience on commercial and product, and it's truly a 1 + 1 = 3 type of formula. Our product and growth teams at NOOM know things that I don't even consider when talking to clients, and vice versa. So I think having all of our groups together at the table, it doesn't have to be a unanimous decision, but behind closed doors, working through whether or not this is the right opportunity and whether or not we can deliver the value that we expect to deliver are some of our questions that we ask all the time when partnerships are sitting in front of us.
Yeah, I think there's also this kind of interesting dynamic where an organization faces whatever challenge or opportunity, and that can be a trend in feature requests out in the field, but it can also just be exogenous factors that present some challenge to the business. And I think it's probably just human nature to think about what are your core competencies when you think about solving for that challenge. And all of these companies are built around a core competency of tech development, product development, software development, et cetera. And yet so often an easier path or an easier solution is not product related. And so, I think, as Chris Lento said, a lot of these, a lot of the product team, they just want to solve every problem you put in front of them. And yet a lot of times you can, manually solve something so much faster. It can be external. It can be a system thing that's external to the product. Not every single challenge needs to run through, your smartphone app, right? And that's a mindset change to some extent, because for so long, these companies have only been focused on perfecting UI, UX, backend, et cetera. And now they're being presented with a problem set and potential solutions where that's great, but we can do this in a different way. And it's a challenge of just around mindset, I think. So.
Right. And this is clearly a growth heavy panel. So if you guys need to talk some trash about product, please feel free. We definitely need to change our mindset sometime.
We're just doing that in a very diplomatic way, if you can't pick it up. So.
Yeah, that was great.
Most of that's kept behind closed doors, right? But like I said, the tension is healthy. And do we always get along? No, but I think we make the right decisions the vast majority of the time when we talk about it. We can't be that far out ahead of each other on either side.
Right.
And I think in between the marketing and or growth, as you call it, and the product team, we constantly have a healthy tension there to deciding on what are the interventions that are going to engage our patients and providers on our system. Are those marketing or growth interventions, or those product interventions, and where do we invest our time? And that gets complicated with new deals coming in constantly and pulling engineer time in different places. So I think it just comes down to communication and trying to, again, build trust and understand that people are coming from a place of good intent and trying to work towards the same goal.
Lauren, I think that from my angle is probably the hardest part of my job, is prioritizing and knowing when to ask. Because the moment I ask for something, somebody at NOOM will probably have to stop what they're already doing and move to something different. And if I can't make a strong case that it's worth it for them to take X amount of time away from what they're doing that's driving revenue or being productive, I don't have a very strong case. And I've learned that I need to really be crisp and clear in my asks, the amount of time I'll need, and more importantly, what it's going to lead to if I do get their time.
Yeah, and I think that's been a learning experience for me, is learn to speak the language of product, learn the Google Doc files that they prefer, the formats that they want to hear, and just speak their language, like put it in the format that they prefer, meet them halfway. And like you said, just distill the information in a way that they can process it quickly.
Agreed. And I ask for the same in return. So when
yes, agree.
We're talking to healthcare folks, and you need to listen what the customer's saying and why things are in this order and why they take as long as they do sometimes. It's not Noom's not going to break that trend of things taking a long time to develop, regardless of how fast any of us think we can work internally.
Awesome. Okay, thanks guys. That was great. I want to shift gears slightly now to kind of focus the conversation on what sort of nuance or additional factors or complications that this industry that we're all in, healthcare, what this brings to the jobs that we're doing, and how that kind of impacts this sort of growth and product dynamic. So maybe Chris, I'll kick it back to you, just because you touched on this a little bit earlier, sort of how healthcare impacts product development, and how you're sort of in this interesting place where you've got a large, like you said, consumer business on one side, where you can maybe test things a little bit easier, run experiments a little bit easier, and that, it sounds like, can inform the health tech side. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, two things come to mind, and using what's happened here around the world in the last 14 months with COVID is a perfect example. We're seeing a vast increase in need from these healthcare channels for our products and services as a result of COVID. I think everything we're doing on the consumer side has helped expedite our drive into, let's say, the employer channel. We now have employees reaching out to their HR and benefit team saying, I'm hurting both mentally and physically as a result of COVID. I need some help. Have you thought about bringing in X, the following product? So I think the moment that has happened is increased the outreach to NOOM. But what we're really selling or promoting is something a little different for employers versus consumers. So product team has been with us every step of the way. In what ways does the product or the service need to be different for an employer group versus how it does with consumer? And unfortunately, the demand is outpacing our response to the demand. So we're moving very deliberately and cautiously to make sure we get it right as we transition.
Interesting problem to have. Cool. Everett, do you have anything to say on this topic?
Yeah, I think there's a difference between wellness, direct to consumer, and I guess regulated healthcare, right? And the impacts on product in particular, and not just having to have a quality management system in place and things like that. I mean, I think those are probably pretty obvious. It's more that you have multiple customers that have or stakeholders / customers, because only generally on the regulated side of the house you only have one ultimate payer, but those different stakeholders all have an opinion and need to have their value points met all by the same product. And that can present a number of challenges in balance, prioritization, and it's often tough to navigate it's tough enough to navigate when you're just focusing on one channel at one time. But in this case, if you're selling something that is, say, physician administered, well, you have to keep the patient happy. You have to have the physician happy, as well as maybe even a health system plus a payer. And all of those endpoints together can be quite complicated. Navigating that is a balance between keeping things simple and clean and still, high design and high usability, while at the same time maybe bolting on a few things that are especially valuable to a payer, or especially valuable to somebody who's not the end user, but a key part of your business model.
Right, bolting on a few things is what every product manager wants to hear. That sounds great.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's the resistance, where they say, look, like we've made this product, we all agree that it's great. It's patients love it, and now we even did the testing with physicians, and we did the payer research around the value prop. But as we go out into the market, payers are saying, if you want me to extend this product for every 3 months, standard is I need to see adherence. I mean, that's true in continuous glucose monitoring today. And so that's becoming an increasing norm across our industry. And suddenly that's a product implication that you probably could have seen coming, but maybe you thought you'd be able to get around it. And even if you didn't think you could get around it, you had 18 months of a product roadmap that had already been prioritized 2 years prior.
That is so interesting. And your, obviously Applied VR is an earlier stage company than like a NOOM, but your product is effective. It's clinically effective. So I'm curious if there are other. I think you just spoke to some of them, but if there are, you got a thing that works, and so I'm curious what constraints, maybe because of the space that we're in, healthcare, that you find as you're trying to grow the company. Like, what are the main headwinds that you face as you're trying to grow your patient base?
Yeah, I mean, it can be something as simple as, so our product is a virtual reality headset. Everything comes all in. You don't have to hook it up to Wi-Fi. And that has long been something that's made the product very user-friendly. Like, we've done testing and we're easier to use than Gmail, right? And that's a huge win for us, and something that our product team is very proud of, as they should be. At the same time, if we need to pull data off of that headset, well, now you have to hook it up to Wi-Fi, or you have to take the headset when it's shipped back and you're reversing the supply chain, and you pull data off of it manually, which is seems so antiquated relative to where we are today, technologically speaking. And it also creates challenges in your reverse supply chain strategy. If you want to just refurb and send something back out, like having this, like, well, we got to pull data off of it first, is a break in the chain. And so that's something that is starts to have implications on the user experience, but you need to think about priorities around the business.
Right. All right. Super interesting. Thank you. Lauren, I'll kick it over to you.
Sure. Kind of a similar sentiment to what Everett was saying in terms of highly fragmented group of stakeholders across the healthcare system, especially in the US healthcare system. So we have many different stakeholders or partners that we work with: pharma, payers, health systems, pharmacies. So there's all these different channels to reach providers or patients, and figuring out what the value proposition is for each of those partners, how to prioritize those partners, and commit resources accordingly is definitely a challenge. I think particular in healthcare, how is it different than other industries? I think there's no tried and true playbook for how to get digital health solutions, digital therapeutics. I know that the industry is very large, but how to get that commercialized, to market, reimbursed traditionally in our healthcare system it's still such a new field. So I think it requires that experimentation with each of these stakeholders, but we can't move at the same pace as perhaps other industries with that experimentation due to some of the regulatory and privacy restraints. So it's a push and pull. We have to experiment with each of these partners to find the right go-to-market pathways and the right commercialization pathways. But we do have some headwinds on speed for that experimentation.
Right, that's a good way to put it. And I think that that does seem to be a common theme that there's no clear playbook, right? It's some experimentation across the different channels and different partner types, and you just have to see what works and who's receptive at a given time and run with that. Okay, cool, thank you. So switching gears a little bit again, I want to talk about strategy, and in particular kind of how business strategy and product strategy kind of overlap. And so maybe I'll start with a little bit of broad question. I'll kick it back to you, Chris. How would you say that business strategy and product strategy interact with one another at NOOM, and what's your role in that overlap?
Yeah, it's a great question and a timely one. Again, I think you get the feel that NOOM has two separate sides of its business. Its consumer business that has been around a very long time, in which the strategy and the course has been plotted. It's really simple. Everybody here in the US sees our TV commercials. We're growing country by country, language by language, and there's a clear path to success on the consumer side. It's been mentioned before, but NOOM is a wellness product, like Everett said, in its current form. It allows us to move really fast and at scale. And now we're deep in the throes of developing the healthcare strategy and trying to how we can leverage all of the great things we've done on the consumer side and bring them over to the healthcare side, knowing there are so many nuances that are different, right? Everything is different. The product strategy lays over the top there. We have wellness products, and NOOM has condition-specific products. NOOM thinks about having regulated products as well. In which order should we do this? What's most important with which customers is all part of the emerging and developing strategy that we're all very much a part of here. But
so
product is involved in all of it.
Right. And so that's just an ongoing conversation, and you try to keep everyone as informed as possible, and ultimately that strategy just kind of materializes through those conversations.
Yeah, is the dog wagging the tail, or is the tail wagging the dog? Some other things we think about is, what evidence do we have? How do we collect the evidence? What do our customers need in the form of evidence? So that's as important as anything, of who's using the product, does it work, and what are the outcomes that it's producing?
Interesting. Okay, cool. Lauren, how would you respond to that question?
Yeah, I think early on in digital health companies, I've been at a seed stage company too. I think strategy is really tightly linked to clinical outcomes in the research team. So it's, how do we build out that outcomes base? It has to be built in evidence to grow if it is going to be a regulated healthcare product. And then kind of now where we are at Propeller's stage of growth, we work strategy, commercial, and product team really closely to develop a long-term strategy. And then on the team levels, in terms of how we strategize with particular partners, particular stakeholder segments or customer segments, we have leaders from each head of the organization. So marketing, commercial product data, clinical typically, and coming together and contributing to perhaps a list of ideas or where we want to go to meet that top line strategy, mapping those out on a level of effort and impact, and deciding how to prioritize that way. So that's quite more tactical, but so like a strategy team who works very closely with product, and then that gets disseminated through different strategic prioritization processes.
Awesome. Thank you. And Everett?
Yeah, Lauren said it best. I think, when you look at where they overlap the most, it's often the nexus is clinical outcomes. And I think that, and I, Chris touched on this as well. Like what evidence, what data do you need? And so it probably all like that Venn diagram really overlaps around that evidence and outcomes nexus. At Applied VR, our product has 6 months of durability. So what that clinically meaningful durability. So what that means is you use a product for 2 months, you can ship it back, and 6 months after shipping it back, you still are experiencing a clinically meaningful reduction in pain. Well, as soon as we saw that data, those clinical outcomes, we said, well, this is pretty fantastic. How do we go from essentially 7.5 to 8 months of non-pharmacologic pain reduction to 12 months, right? And what can we do product-wise? What can we do business-wise? What can we do, hub and patient services-wise, et cetera, to extend that, and then within that 8-month period, increase that clinically meaningful effect to something that's even more extraordinary. But it's all revolving around those clinical signals or the clinical outcomes and what you're trying to achieve, because it starts there. If you don't have a product that's clinically meaningful and clinically effective, then it's going to be tough to scale.
That's super interesting. Okay, cool. Thank you all. We're coming up on time here, so I want to just ask one more quick question. And this is very broad, zooming way out. So clearly there's a lot happening in digital health and health tech right now. There's tons of funding entering the space, a lot of new founders starting companies, just a lot of innovation generally. So I'm curious for each of you, maybe even outside of the company you're at or what you're working on right now, what trends, whether they're technological or industry trends or whatever, what are you most excited about coming to healthcare in the near to medium term future? And I'll kick it back to you, Everett.
Well, one, now that Chris and I are on here, I want to see how I can get NOOM to stop stalking me around the internet. That's I'm really excited about having access to Chris to figure that one out. I think the thing that I'm most excited about in digital health, digital therapeutics, is the promise of this, call it, fourth generation, where you have companies that are moving from, have had a tremendous experience in cognitive behavioral therapy or behavioral therapy, and are using all of that mountain of data and mining that to see what they can create and advance that's truly disease modifying. And some of those innovations are going to come out of companies like NOOM and PROPELLER and others, and I think some are going to come from that leapfrog effect that a company that was started in 2013 is really today laid an amazing groundwork for somebody to accelerate through what has been 7 to 8 years of blood, sweat, and tears. And now that groundwork's laid, I think the speed of digital can really be brought to bear against the challenges in healthcare, and I think it's going to be fantastic. And these are going to be truly like disease modifying products.
That is genuinely exciting. Cool. What about you, Lauren?
I think from a high level view, and I think this comes very natural to all of us on this call and within the digital health industry, but a recognition from outside the industry that the patient experience is important and can start to be a priority. I think maybe with so much investment and interest in the digital health space, that will become more of a focus and more of a talking point. The patient experience matters, and improving that just as you would a customer experience or a direct consumer product is really important. I think personally, things I'm interested in are how to leverage the pharmacist better. I think that's really interesting. We've kind of played around with different ways to engage pharmacies and pharmacists at Propeller, but I think it's a really core member of the healthcare team that's underutilized, especially in the States. And being out in Europe right now and kind of speaking with different people in different countries, I think that's actually a theme across many different countries, that pharmacist resources are underutilized. So that personally interests me.
I guess I'll pick it up at the end. And because of COVID, I'm sitting down in my office more often. So I would love to have an applied VR headset to deal with my back pain. But,
Got it.
aside from that, I'm super excited about all of the digital work that's being done, mostly because it's giving patients access to things that they haven't had prior. And while the landscape might be shifting slightly where the healthcare provider has less of a role, but still a very important role, I like the fact that we can deliver these products directly to patients. And now the patient is owning their own health journey rather than relying on so many other parts of a somewhat broken healthcare system, but they can actually take some ownership, take some charge, and improve things on their own as well. I think that's exciting to create educated and informed people who become patients, unfortunately.
Well, I think that will do it for us today. Thank you all so much. This was fascinating and a huge privilege for me to get to host this talk. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I know you're all busy people, and hopefully we can get together and talk soon.
Thanks, Chris. Real pleasure.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah,
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Everett.